The filler, the hiatuses, the rushed character development, the Steven-only perspective, the story being written by storyboard artists instead of actual writers, all these things combined result in a giant unfocused mess with the story having no real sense of direction. A problem that would eventually reach its apex in Season 5, where everything the show has been building up for the last 4 seasons is completely demolished. And what better place to start than the horribly handled breakup between Steven and Connie? I talked before about the lack of urgency in the story, with Steven neglecting to tell Lars' parents about their missing son and him not bothering to consult with the Gems about what happened on Homeworld, but the one thing that really sticks out like a sore thumb is Connie's unbearable selfishness in leaving Steven. You might try to make a case for Connie in that she was hurt by Steven going back on their promise that they would face obstacles together, but here's the thing. The way Connie reacts to this situation and her feelings towards it are not justified. The situation was extremely dire and Aquamarine was established to have enough power to overwhelm Alexandrite. Stevani was certainly not gonna do anything. They literally had no chance of winning that fight, and Steven surrendering himself was what saved everyone from being kept prisoner. And even if they somehow ended up winning, the Diamonds would have just come to inspect the situation and everyone would be in even more danger. Steven minimalized the damage by surrendering himself. And if you still want to make a case for Connie, it doesn't change the fact that her actions are terrible. First of all, Connie takes Lion with her, and for whatever reason, he just stays with her in spite of having a stronger relationship with Steven. This already makes no sense because in the first Lion episode, Steven was in danger. Lion saved him and stayed with him, even after he went off on him. So now when there's a way more urgent situation, he just decides to leave him in favor of Connie? And isn't Lion the only means to check up on Lars while he's trapped on a hostile planet? What if Steven needs to check on him? Why would Lion suddenly have a stronger bond with Connie over Steven? Why does he have a stronger bond with Connie over Rose, the person who saved him from death? Steven has a more familiar connection with Lion than Connie due to a life debt, and he just decides to run off and not think about him at all. And Connie never tells Lion to return to Steven. She literally took his pet. Connie is acting extremely selfish here. Her feelings are not more important than the fact that Steven's sacrifice saved everyone. Maybe he could have been more aware of her feelings, but that doesn't change the fact that he made the right decision. All of the other characters understood this and were actually thankful that Steven got home safe. Connie should have realized this and not acted so narrow-minded. She's putting her feelings and egotistical need to fight alongside Steven over the seriousness of the situation, and it just comes across as really immature. This is extremely out of character for Connie because she was built up to be a lot smarter and understanding than this. Her need to fight with Steven blinded her to the reality that they were out of options, and it makes Steven seem completely in the wrong when the dispute is supposed to be ambiguous. His side of the argument is never explored, and it sends the message that one person's feelings matter more than several people's lives, which is a terrible lesson to send to the audience. It makes it seem like Steven giving himself up to Homeworld only affected Connie when it literally affected everyone, including the Gems and his dad. Wasn't there an episode where Connie learns a lesson about how it's better to vent your frustrations rather than bottle them up? Why wasn't that applied here? Why is there no attempt at resolving this verbally instead of running off? This problem could have been resolved in a single episode, but it gets stretched out for 6. Steven and Connie are supposed to have a good enough relationship that they can talk things out instead of running away moping. They should have just said what they were feeling and make up. It didn't need to be dragged out like this. And there's more important things going on than this dumb angst between Steven and Connie. They brushed off really deep issues about the possible loss of humanity with the way Lars was killed and brought back to life. We could have explored how this would affect the rest of his life and whether or not he's still human, if he can live life normally anymore, how his absence would affect the people in his life. And it only gets worse from there. When Steven and Connie finally get back together, you'd think there would be a good reason for why Connie didn't contact Steven for all those episodes. But there is no good reason, and Connie was just being a moron, purposefully leaving Steven in the dark. They bring up how she could have easily sent a text, but she didn't do it because she thinks it sounds dumb that she would be sending a text saying she can't talk to him, but that would technically be talking to him, which is a stupid reason for not wanting to contact someone. Even if you wanted to talk in person, you could have sent a message telling Steven where to meet you. And if you still needed time to yourself, the least you could have done was text Steven saying we'll talk about it later. But here's what really gets me. Connie has this dumb outburst over feeling ignored and says, I guess Kevin is your best friend now. That is extremely petty for Connie to say when she was ignoring him, and she really has no ground to stand on when she was repeatedly failing to make an effort to reach out to him. And it's a huge contradiction to how her character was established over the last 4 seasons. There's an extreme single-mindedness to how this conflict is handled, and it gets really irritating to think about. The episode Gemcation showed how Greg spending time with Steven by camping out in the woods was his way of dealing with what his son did. Couldn't we have gotten something like that for Steven and Connie? An episode where they try to do something together to make up for their disagreement? But the worst thing about this arc? It's completely pointless. It adds absolutely nothing to the story. You can easily skip the next 6 episodes after Lars' head except racing the barn and back to the kindergarten, and you would miss nothing. They waste so much time on this pointless conflict when they could have focused on the fallout of the abduction, or Lars' parents and their reaction to their son being turned into a space zombie, or the gems reflecting on what happened on Homeworld. But instead we get episodes about Steven and the cool kids starting a stupid band and an election for a town that has long since overstated screen time. And it just gets worse for Connie because after Kevin's party, for the rest of the show, she just stops being a character. She just isn't relevant to the plot anymore. She went from being cool to annoying to just kind of being there. She doesn't do anything noteworthy and just serves as a plot device for Steven to fuse at the ball to kickstart the conflict on Homeworld. She has no actual purpose in the remainder of the show other than fusion, so why is she still here? She's quickly shown to be powerless against the Diamond, so what purpose does she have in the team? Oh wait, there is one scene where she, gets a new sword, and another scene where she, gets in a fight with Possessed Pearl for about 10 seconds. Like, it's literally 10 seconds and 5 seconds of it happens off screen. And then she, carries Steven over to his diamond when the diamond could have easily just walked over to Steven on its own. That's about it. But Connie's breakup and irrelevance is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how bad Season 5 is. Aside from spending the most time in hiatus and being dragged out for the longest time amongst the other seasons, it's also home to the worst writing in the entire show. Sloppily handled storylines, sluggish pacing, and it ends up teaching some of the worst lessons in a show meant to be a positive influence on children. We've already talked about how selfish and bratty Connie is, as well as how horrible and toxic Lapis is to Peridot, and the lack of urgency by spending more time on pointless filler than developing the actual story. So now it's time to talk about the big one, the shocking twist that Rose was Pink Diamond the whole time. And it's the Rose was Pink Diamond plot twist and all the unfortunate implications surrounding it, where Steven Universe's narrative breaks entirely.